that's a super nice discussion we had. Yeah.
So what have you run into with urine therapy and medical anthropology just at large?
I know that there's a bit on urine therapy and medical anthropology. First of all, I personally, so far, I haven't like immersed myself in urine therapy.
Did you see it at all, like around the guru or the ashram, or not at all?
So in my lineage, no one was doing it.
No. This is my hypothesis, is that there's a few things that I'm just going to say first. Like, I was just talking to a brain scientist who ran a division of the NIH in the US. So he's, top notch. He was saying in his evolutionary biology studies, human brain size has shrunk 10% in 10,000 years. So since agriculture. So the rise of culture is somewhat 30,000 years old, a bit, right? Where we see more like pots and art, right? 30,000 roughly. 10,000 years ago, we have agriculture, which drives people from tribes into villages, right? Sustainable food supply. Brain size starts shrinking. Culture starts rising. And in that we have different culture has codes of conduct, and disgust is the chief emotion that's used to control populations. Like any new regime coming in creates its own, like you guys know this better than anywhere in Germany with the Jews, right? Like, how do you make a neighbor hate a neighbor? You use the emotion of disgust. That's so well documented. I'm not even going to back it up right now. Anyone who wants to know, just look into Western psychology. This is not coming from Eastern psychology entirely, although I'm sure you can find it. So my sense is that as classes rose, right? Because then we have the rise of caste systems and class systems, right? Villages, like before tribes, you don't have that. Everyone can do everything. You have everyone can be, in that case, also like to some degree a medicine man, right? Like there's way more plasticity in society. People have to be able to do a number of different things. And then when you have villages, you have differentiation, you have rise in power, you have the haves and the have-nots. And I don't know how old India's caste system is, but there's definitely, it goes back. So in class systeming, if I make that into a verb, you have to keep applying disgust, right? So even in India, we have like the untouchables. We have the things that only certain castes will do out of necessity. And if you're in the highest caste, it means you have the most, first of all, you can create the rules. So you're now creating these rules of disgust. What we know in India with urine therapy is it's really popular to use cow urine in supplementation, right? And then we're getting all the same effects that we do, more or less with human urine, as far as it's been analyzed and studied, which is clearly not enough. Cows have obviously a diet that's very, very high in chlorophyll. So we're going to see a lot between chlorophyll and hemoglobin molecules are super similar. So you're going to see increased nitric oxide, increased oxygenation, all the things that happen with nitric oxide that are happening in urine therapy anyways. So my guess is what happened is it became too disgust oriented. It was a way of differentiating class. This might be going back now, I'm just going to guess, 4,000 to 8,000 years ago, where it was like, you can't use your own urine, which all animals are doing anyways. Like dogs drink their urine, cows drink their urine, like mammals drink urine, human mammals. It's how we survived. I mean, basically it's like, how did we cross deserts? How did we make it through droughts? How did we, right? It's like, there's just the physiological evidence. It's like, it's a great secondary hydration tool. And it's my guess is it was primary medicine, secondary hydration, tertiarily could be used as a food supplement because it's super high in amino acids, right? So humans were using it, and we can see it in Native Americans. We can see it in Indians. We can see it's like any indigenous culture. The Chinese were doing it, like everyone knew. But then it seems like it just became a classification tool to differentiate classes, especially because the doctors, it's not new that doctors make more money, right? It's not new that the priests in the doctor class, the highest class, whether it's like the priests, the kings, and the doctors, same class, more or less, right? So they make the rules. And then from what I can tell is it just went underground, which is why teachers like Swami Rama, who came to the US in the, I don't know, like around the 50s or 60s, right? And that's now Yoga International. It's like the sort of the institution that became what he had started. He was a big urine therapist, urine advocate. And it's like, how did he knew? He was raised by the gurus in the Himalayas. So the gurus still are doing it. They're still doing it. But it's not talked about and it's not practiced. And now what we just see in India is the rise of cow urine supplementation. Put it in, dehydrate it and put it in plastic bottles. So what I'd love to know from you is, like, as a medical anthropologist, can you advise me in how to find the research? Because like I keep looking on the web and I keep finding little bits here and there, but like, how would you approach that?
Yeah, I think it's a big puzzle. I myself would have to spend some proper amount of time to look into it and find some resources. I looked, and some of it feels like it doesn't give me the answers that I'm looking for. Maybe to what you were saying, this is highly interesting. My own idea is that please give me your answer. I'm not convinced that maybe not everyone should drink their own urine, because if you're suffering from particular illnesses, okay, this might be a cure. But if you're taking drugs, pharmaceutical, chemical substances, it's not a good idea. And
what the user groups find with that, because that's the common response, is what the user groups say is basically they just end up, and this is users who are told, because they're on pharmaceuticals, not to drink urine, find out about it. And they're kind of like, well, if I could get me off the drugs. And what tends to happen, and I've just seen story after story after story after story after story after story after story, is like they quickly don't need the drugs.
That's perfect. That's perfect then. Yeah. Excellent.
Right. So there's a natural feedback loop that balances the system, decreases the need for an outside control. And I think it just restores homeostasis, more or less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like this idea, and I think you might really be right. Since you were going back so long, this is interesting to me. And my idea, in my head at least, I might be very wrong. Probably I am. My idea is that these prehistoric societies were kind of healthy in comparison to our.
Well, they didn't have chronic disease, so none of the current diseases.
They didn't have many
infections.
Lifestyle diseases, that's for sure, yes. And now we have a lot of drugs and techniques and technology, but we have all these diseases, and I don't know which came first. So we have doctors, we have a whole system, and to be honest, I mean, if everyone were healthy, then all the doctors were out of their jobs. So I'm not saying doctors keep the population unhealthy, but I mean, I think both kind of goes together. And earlier, at a very early stage, humans didn't have the same problems, at least, and different problems, different diseases probably, but different bodies. Let's agree on that maybe. And they did have a different understanding of their bodies. And I think now we have this idea that, oh, these are my excretions, like feces and urine. That's just disgusting. And how can you have even the idea of touching that, of even consuming it? That's just wrong. Urine, it's disgusting. And probably earlier that idea and this feeling wasn't there, wasn't the same. And there was a different approach to it. And I think that's also a kind of healthy kind of way of dealing with it. But it may have to do also with the overall health, being aware that, okay, this is something that it's the process of going through your body and of detoxification. But what is there to detoxify if you're actually living on plants and on
There's nothing. There's nothing to detoxify.
Nothing to detoxify.
So this is what, as far as like the alchemy stuff, what I keep running into is the word water in the text is referring to urine. So if I go back into even like Hatha Yoga, Pradipika, or other books, and I see something about water, I'm now taking that as a reference to urine. And a lot of the Vedic scholars are saying, well, there's not really urine therapy in Ayurveda, but it's like, in my experience, it's like they couldn't be explicit. At some point, they couldn't be explicit. Would you say that lines up with your experience of Siddha medicine of like?
Very much in a way it does. I would even go further. Urine is really considered a medicine in those Siddha medical texts. And sometimes it is being prescribed. It's usually not, the idea is not to consume it on a regular basis, but sometimes it is being prescribed. And especially it's being used as a very potent substance in some of these chemical processes, in fact. So you would have, for example, a substance like iron or mercury, which is, even in Ayurveda, there's a whole, or used to be, it's not as popular anymore. There used to be this Rasa Shastra, which is basically the science of mercury usage for medical consumption. So mercury can be consumed safely, provided there's an expert who knows how to prepare the substance. And it's a lengthy preparation process. So anyone having the idea now, taking mercury and swallowing
it's totally, I went to an ashram, like a guru medicine ashram in Kerala, and it was like a friend of mine knew about it, and these monks were making the medicines with heavy metals, and it was like just the vats and the process of it, it's super complex. It's not a DIY. But it's about alchemy. So, I mean, this is my sense, is because urine ferments, it's the natural alchemical process. And what the urine therapists are finding is that like it grows.
Or like as a cleansing substance. So urine is usually in Siddha medicine considered a cleansing substance. It can be applied to mercury and other substances like that, to heavy metals and to other minerals. And to their own body. So there's this idea.
Were they fermenting it at all? Were they aging it?
Yeah. You find that. You find fermenting processes. I myself, I'm not an expert on urine usage in alchemy or in other medicinal preparation processes at all. But I've read that. It's being like matured. It's being processed in different ways. And mixed with plants and metals. Okay. Well, after I'm done with my research for the Wild Habits book, I'm diving full on into urine therapy research. So I good news. Yeah, it's you never know where life takes you, right? I just follow the truth. That's great. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your perspective on that. I do really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. You're the expert.